another chance. Blessed with another chance. I am. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle, the Identity Coach. If you are new and stopping by for the first time, welcome. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel and decide to become a part of my little growing family um, that I'm working on here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's hop into it. So, this video, well, I should say this is going to be more in a kind of like a podcast type of way. Because I'm not really in the mood to like show my face. I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to show my face, like if I was really in the mood for that today. I'm kind of not really in the mood to show my face today. So you may just get an audio of this instead. But I'll go back and forth between show my face and not show my face. It just depends on how I'm feeling that day. But anyway, so I had a doctor's appointment. This doctor's appointment was for my diagnosis to see if I had ADHD, and I, in fact, have ADHD. So I only became more self aware like in the last few months. Um, Prior to that, I knew I felt like something was kind of off with me, but I couldn't quite place my finger on it. And I thought, it might be ADHD, but I never got that deep into it to actually see, oh, well, is it ADHD? And I never got that deep into it as to like taking the action steps to getting diagnosed and, reaching out to psychiatrists and things like that for testing. And just recently, I decided to go ahead and do that because the behaviors just started becoming, well, the behaviors were always there, but I just started to become more self aware in my day to day life. Because if you are new to this channel and you probably haven't seen too much of my content, I am a single mother of three. And so it was hard to pinpoint as to, whether or not it was more than just me being a stressed out single mother taking care of three kids, working two jobs, and running a household by myself, um, which would actually, it that would cause somebody to kind of disregard it or push it to the side because it's like, well, I'm busy. This is why I'm busy, because I am a single mother, and I am working two jobs, and I am responsible for running my household, paying the bills, making sure everything is taken care of, plus taking care of the kids, plus somewhere down the line, there's me, in the midst of everything. So it's easy to write it off, especially if you're a single mother, you're working, you're going to school, and you're taking care of your household. It's easy to kind of say, oh, it's just stress, and that's it. Um, and that's because of, um, it's, because of the things that ADHD is um, associated with. Um, ADHD is associated with a lot of things. There are the basic. So a lot of the times when people think of ADHD, they think of someone that's really, hyper, always running around. They may have a lot of energy, they may think of someone, like that. But ADHD it's way more than that, and it goes way beyond that. Um, Actually, ADHD can get pretty complex, And from what I've learned so far, there are different variations of ADHD because of the fact that it can be so complex. Um, and we will, get into, more of that at a later date. But what I wanted to talk about was my doctor's appointment. I ended up seeing one psychiatrist, and I ended up going to a completely different practice. So my experience with the first psychiatrist that I sat down and spoke with, it was not a good experience at all. It wasn't a good experience. I didn't feel seen and I didn't feel heard. She talked over me a lot, and I really didn't get the chance to express myself that much. Not to mention, I was waiting in the waiting room for about a good hour and 30 minutes before, you know, someone came out to get me. And what ended up happening was, because I had sat there for so long and people came and went, came and went, came and went. And I'm thinking to myself, well, did they forget about me? Did they forget I'm here? And I'm trying my best to like be still and, not fidget and not move around. And I'm trying my best to also take into consideration, like, well, there are other patients here to be seen. You're not the only one, Michelle. So, doctor's appointments, it takes time. You're not always in and out of a doctor's appointment at all. You can definitely expect to be there for a while, but sitting in that waiting room, the fact that people were just coming and going, I sat there. The people who I saw coming in, I sat there long enough where I saw them coming out. So I was like, but nobody bothered to let me know that the doctor who would be seeing me and diagnosing me had an emergency that she was taking care of. That would have been, I feel like, the professional um courteous thing to do. Come to me and say, who are you waiting to see? And say, oh yes, they had an emergency, but they are coming back and they will be right with you. Thank you so much for your patience. That did not happen. What ended up happening was I ended up having to get up and go to um the desk and say, hey, did they forget about me? I'm a new patient. I haven't been called to the back yet. And then that's when the lady was like, oh, the doctor had an emergency back at home, but she's back now and she'll be coming to get you soon. Because I sat there, I had like got some snacks on the way there, and I had left my snacks in the car, and I was like, well, shoot, I could have brought my snacks in here, you know. And so what ended up happening was I had to go to the bathroom. So I ended up going to the bathroom and going to get my snacks. And by the time I came back, the lady said, "Oh, she just came out to get you. I'll take you to her office." And I'm like, "Okay." So we go to the office and I meet the psychiatrist, and she was a nice lady, had a nice demeanor and everything. And she just basically explained to me, how she had an emergency situation with her husband, and she had to check on him, because they're up in age, they're elderly. And I was completely compassionate, and empathetic towards her situation, when understanding, because let's say, for example, if that was me, I would hope somebody was, compassionate and empathetic towards, me having an emergency, but making sure that I get back to, see my patient. So this is where it gets kind of just awkward for me in a way. If you've watched any of the content on my channel, then you would know that I am a very spiritual person. I do have a relationship with God. Um, yes, but there is a time and a place for everything. So this is what happened, and this is what makes it awkward. So after she tells me what, after she tells me about her emergency situation, and I did let her know that I understood where she was coming from. She said, "Did someone in your family recently die?" And I gave her a confused look, like, "Do you know anybody in my family?" But I told her, I was like, "No." And she was like, your grandmother." And I said, my grandmother passed away. That was years ago. I said, but I was recently just speaking to a relative about my grandmother. And she let me know that she had a, spiritual gift or whatever, being able to connect with spirits. And, I was like, "Oh, okay, wonderful. That is beautiful. That's a beautiful gift." And so basically she was telling me that, my she could feel my grandmother's presence, and she was telling me how, my grandmother, always loved me, and how she always wanted the best for me. And how my grandmother was like a really strong lady. And so then I started telling her, well, yeah, I never got the chance to say goodbye to my grandmother, you know, when she, passed away or whatever. Um, and so she was telling me, well, you didn't get the chance to say goodbye because it's not goodbye. She was like, she never left. She's still here. I can feel her presence in the room. She was like, your grandmother is your guardian angel. She's with you. She's always with you. And when she told me that, I accepted it. She was like, "Do you believe that?" And I said, I told her I did. I said, I accepted that. But then she started rambling from there. Then she was basically it was kind of like, you have to know when to put a cap on something. I am here to be diagnosed for ADHD. I am here to talk about ADHD. And the turn that it took was not, we briefly, and I mean briefly, touched on ADHD. We briefly touched on me having ADHD, and she did let me know that she had ADD. And I was like, okay. I said, well, I was thinking to myself, okay, I need to find a doctor. I mean, because a lot of times, and this is so crazy, because a lot of times you want to find people that are going through the same thing you're going through, because you feel like they're going to be understanding. But sometimes that's not always for the best, because you need that balance. If someone has it, they're, it's okay to for the other person not to have it, as long as they're, compassionate, understanding. You don't want someone who doesn't have it, who doesn't understand, who's not compassionate. But and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, as I was sitting there talking to her, and she was doing more fidgeting and moving than I was doing, I'm like, I was thinking to myself, what is this? She's got more fidgeting and moving and talking going on than I do. Because one of the things about ADHD and ADD is the talking. Sometimes we can talk, 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 talk. And when we're in the midst of a conversation, sometimes we have a tendency to talk over the other person. And it's not because, it's not something that we're doing on purpose. It's something that, what's the word I'm looking for? It's something that you do, but you're not consciously aware that you're doing that. And so she like, I was there to be diagnosed, but she clearly had all the signs. Okay. um and whenever So she was talking about my name, and she was talking about how she knew someone who had the same name as I did, and so she decided to tell me that person's life story, and I'm thinking to myself, I am here. What I really wish I had have done was stopped her midway and said, "I'm sorry. Can we please go back to um the ADHD, because that's what I'm here for." While, I respect your work, while I appreciate the fact that you felt the need to let me know that, my grandmother was still relevant in my life and she hasn't gone anywhere, I am here to discuss, my diagnosis for ADHD. And I would like to stay on that topic, because this is new for me. And, and I didn't do that, and I wish I had of done that. I really wish I had of done that, but it is what it is. But um oh my goodness. And so we touched briefly on the ADHD. So we touched briefly on, my childhood, how, my learning played a part. We touched briefly on, the things that I go through now as, an adult. But it was so much more that I wanted to say. It was so much more that I needed to express, to get off of my chest, because this is something that I have been dealing with for many years. And I've been dealing with this in silence, and I had never came out to anyone about this because I wasn't sure what I had, what I didn't have, or what it was or what it wasn't. um and I wanted to make sure I had someone who could give me a genuine listening ear. So that's another reason why I really didn't care to discuss it with other people. um, I wanted someone who could relate, but not relate so much to the point where I was like overshadowed. And it's not about, like, it's not about wanting attention or needing attention. It was about just being able to feel seen and being able to feel heard. This is new for me. And so since I've been diagnosed with it, I've been doing like more and more research and, looking into things. And so I am, rediscovering who I am. I'm an identity coach. My goal is to help other women, step into their true identity and redefine who they are. And I am in that period in my life as well. I am rediscovering who I am. um and the experience was not good. And so she did diagnose me with ADHD. What ended up happening though was when I got back to the waiting room, I was setting up my appointment to come back at a later date. Mind you, we did not even go over options. We did not go. Let me tell you what she did. After the doctor diagnosed me with having ADHD, she said, "I'm going to send medication to your pharmacy." Excuse me, we did not even talk about medication options. You didn't ask me if I wanted to be on medication or if I wanted to take the natural route. You did not ask me any of these questions. You diagnosed me with ADHD and you said, "I'm going to send your prescription to the pharmacy." You don't even know how I feel about the medications that are on the market for people with ADHD. Like, none of this was discussed. None of it was discussed. And I'm like, "Okay, Michelle, this is not going to work. This is not the person for you." Because when you are seeking out um someone, as it pertains to your physical health as well as your mental health, you want to make sure that person has your best interest. You want to make sure that person really cares, and that they're, also that they're passionate about it. I did get that she was passionate about what she was doing to a degree. And I hate to sound like this, and I'm not discriminating against anybody, age wise, but I think it was at that point where it was probably time for her to retire. Honestly, because if you can't give that complete undivided attention to your patients, and you're just rambling on and you're talking and you can't really take the time to hear your patients out, um and it it, it it's crazy. I sat in the waiting room for a good hour and 30 minutes. Okay, then I was rushed. I had an outburst at the front desk as I was trying to figure out what the next date for my next appointment was going to be. It was an emotional outburst. It wasn't an outburst like I had a tantrum. No, it wasn't that. So the lady who was at the front desk prior to me going back to see the doctor, she was still at the front desk when I came back out from the appointment, and she was the one who was setting my appointment for a later date. And the psychiatrist came out. The psychiatrist was like, she also has ADHD as well, and so does this other lady at the front desk. And I'm thinking to myself, Lord have mercy, maybe that's the problem. We got too many people in here with ADHD. We need some. We need a balance. We need it's okay to have some people that got it, but Lord Jesus, we need a balance. Okay. But anyway, the lady, she was very sweet, and so I was just talking to her, and she asked me how the appointment went, and I was like, it was good. I lied. I'm so mad at myself that I lied. I really wish I had a said, I really wish I had been honest and said, well, I really was hoping that I would have more time to really talk about, how I've been feeling, what I've been going through, and talking about it and stuff. But, I felt rushed, and because I didn't get that real one on one time like I was expecting to get. So, I felt like I was um, cheated. I felt like I was cheated out of my time, which honestly I was. But I ended up crying at the front desk because I was talking about what I have been dealing with, how I've been feeling, how I've been functioning as a person, and it was just really overwhelming. It's been very overwhelming for me. And so that's why I ended up crying, and she came from the back office, and she gave me a hug, and she was like, "Oh, honey," she said, "you really needed to get that out, didn't you?" She said, "You really needed to be able to express yourself and get that out." And I was like, "Yes, it's been a lot. It has been a lot. It has taken a toll on me." And I decided when I left there that I was not going back. And so I made it my business to look for another practice, because I need that help. Um, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a part two out of this. So this is gonna be part one. Part one is basically going over my appointment, you know, the process of, me getting my diagnosis and whatnot for ADHD. And then the part two is basically going to cover the rest of this. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. And you all make sure you stay tuned for part two, because part two to this is coming. All right, y'all.